going to get started just a couple more minutes. We're missing one of our presenters here.
Okay.
Is somebody playing pool? Is that you, George?
No.
I hear a pool table in the background somewhere.
Well, I heard it too.
I was sitting there at first, I was, what is that? I was like, that's gotta be cool. I think Steven must be on the wrong one, Harry. Did he go to the old one? Let me keep my, hold on.
So we need, you and I talked about this.
Hello, everybody.
Oh, hey, Steven. Great.
Hey, Stephen.
How are you doing?
Doing good. We seem to have no technical difficulties yet, but don't give me time to mess it up, really.
All right. I'm sure we'll get there. All right, well, we're going to mute things on our end while we're waiting for you.
Okay, great. We're getting ready to get started right now then. We're going to give everybody just one more minute and then fire away. We're going to start off with Harry, I believe.
And they have different tabs. And the total amount.
Chris,
Yeah.
how many people are going to be on the call?
Let me tell you how many we got right now. Well, it doesn't have a listing of us. I would say it looks like there's about 20 people on the call right now.
I'll shut up then.
Seriously. Yes. Please, everybody, all my colleagues, please try to keep your teasing of me to a minimum. We are in public right now. All right, I'll go ahead and I guess we'll go ahead and get going. Well, welcome, everybody. I appreciate you taking the time to join us for our webinar here today. And we are keeping our format pretty relaxed here, and we'll see if you all are interested in this. We can have more in the future, keeping you up to date with the project. So we're also gonna keep it brief so that we have plenty of time for questions. So if you have a question in real time, just speak up. You also, there's a chat window. If you can find it, you can send it to me on the chat window, but also just feel free to chime in on your audio and ask a question at any moment. I was going to introduce the whole team here at the beginning, and we're going to have to go around and introduce the few speakers today. This project is brought to you by a lot of people, I should say. We have a whole host of people both in Maryland, Georgia, North Carolina. I've been working on this for a year, developing all these protocols, and I don't think I can do credit to everybody, introducing everybody. So I think each time when we have a webinar, we'll try to introduce more faces to you. Today, we're going to just run over the entirety of the types of things that we're going to do, give you a sampling, talk about how you can interact with the data and what we'll be showing either to you as an extension agent or to you as a farmer. And we're going to start things off with a couple people who've been working very hard over the last couple months to get all these sensors working for you. We have Harry Schomburg and Alondra Thompson at the Belleville USDA ARS Research Station. You guys want to start us off?
Okay, Chris, we'll do our best here. I'm going to share my screen, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to share, let's see if I can do this again, what we were doing before. I'm going to share my PowerPoint. And I'm going to share that screen. How's it look?
Great. I just saw you come up on my screen.
And is my PowerPoint showing?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to start from the beginning, and I'm going to make it a little bigger. How's that?
That looks great. Oh, and can I say one thing more, Harry, I want to say about yours is that, for one thing I've been saying in North Carolina is there are multiple ways in which you can interact in terms of pulling the data down for the agents and the farmers. And so you're going to hear about several ways that this can be done here today, but also don't feel like if you're like get overwhelmed, like, whoa, that's too much for me, that's okay. We have multiple ways in which people are going to be tying in with this.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Chris, because what I'm going to go through here, we have written out in some documents that you're going to put on the, or we're in the process of revising them. We'll put them on the SIG SharePoint site, the Google Docs, and then you can send them out. Hopefully we've got it described in easy enough manner that anybody can do this, because I've been able to figure it out. So, sometimes Alondra has to hold my hand, and sometimes Becca has to hold my hand to get it done. But anyway, so let's get started. I know that we don't have a lot of time here. Basically, what we're going to do here is go overview of the water sensors network, talk a little bit about the gateway, the nodes, and the sensors, and how we put them in the field. Not too much on that, but then talk about the software, how to install the software on your PC, or if you have an Android device, and then a little bit about data collection. And I guess if somebody has a question, they want to send it through a chat, we'll try to answer that, or I don't know how you want to handle questions, Chris.
It's fine too. Then just speak up too. A lot of people I see have their microphones on mute, and thank you. I think that's a very good way to go. But if you do have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and just ask it as well.
Just jump in. You may have to wave your hands, Chris, so that we know they're talking.
Okay.
Okay, so basically this is sort of a schematic of what the field layout's going to be, where we have our two strips, one with cover crops and one without cover crops. In the cover crop strip, there'll be a data node, and that data node will be connected to the sensors that are within that area. So there'll be a data node in the cover crop area, a data node in the no cover crop area, and the various sensors. And then there'll be a gateway that's at the end of the field that the nodes will communicate back with. The node installation here, if you look over here on the lower right-hand corner where it says 1, that's a photograph of the soil water sensor. And it's attached to a PVC pipe so that we can just push it into the ground and we can leave that PVC pipe attached to it. There's a mark up here near the point where that sensor, the surface where that sensor, to mark how deep that sensor is going to be placed. And then if you go over here to number 2, there's a rubber ring that goes around the PVC pipe to keep water from running down the pipe. 3 is what the cap looks like at the top of the sensor and the cable coming out. 4 is actually the little data node or our data logger that's inside this box. And there's this little solar panel. The PVC pipes that are in the fields, the actual fields, won't be this tall. You know, we were just doing an install here so that we could get some photographs for the for this webinar. And the wiring and all won't be that messy. We have some pretty long cables on some of our sensors. So, but basically that's sort of the way it would look in the field. At the other end of the field, the gateway or the gateway unit, which the nodes transmit data to, very similar looking boards. If you look over here at number 4 on the right hand side, the boards looks pretty similar, but it's a different color. But basically, down here in one, you've got to dig a hole, you've got to put a PVC pipe there. Come over here, we've got a humidity sensor that's in sort of a homemade housing so that we can sense humidity, and that's the sensor right there above it. And then the main, the whole setup there. So that would be at the end of the field. Basically, the node collects data from the sensors, and every hour it transmits the data to the gateway. It also stores that data on a micro SD card at the node. The data that's transmitted to the gateway is stored also on a micro SD card. So that gives us a backup of any data that's out there in the field. And as Alondra found this morning, it's a good thing that we've done that, because sometimes buttons don't get pushed and the data doesn't get transmitted between the node and the gateway. So, so that's how the data is being transmitted in the field. Now, to get data from the gateway, we really have 3 different ways of doing that. We can use a Windows-based PC, laptop, or a tablet, and we have 2 pieces of software that can work to work with that. Or you can use an Android device like an Android phone or an Android tablet. And if all else fails, you can use a micro SD card reader, and you can just pop that micro SD card out and then put it in a reader and transfer the data over to your phone that way. You got something you want to add?
Just the micro SD card is really kind of a last resort if the Bluetooth fails. And that's because once you take the SD card out and when you put it back in, you have to push the reset for the program to start again, or else, and if you don't push it, it's not going to take any more data.
So, we'll go back and we're going to start off and just sort of go down this list. The Arduino software is available at the Arduino website. They like to get donations for their software, but you don't really have to, so you can just download it. And then once you download it to your PC, you can install it. It's like installing any program that you would download from the web. So once you've got that on your computer and you've gone out to the field, what you've got to do is you've got to pair the Bluetooth on your laptop or your tablet with the Bluetooth that's on the gateway. So you have to go to your, basically this slide is showing going to your devices, add a device, and then once you when you say add a device, well, first let me back up. You have to push the button on the gateway enclosure to start the Bluetooth unit on that device. Then you can say add a device. The tiny sign Bluetooth should come up as a device that you can add, and the window should display connecting to that device. Once that happens, it'll come in and ask you to enter the pairing code. The pairing code is 1234. Again, that's 1234. And once that you enter that, punch next, and then it'll say configuring device. Once it's successfully paired, it'll say successfully paired, and it'll show up in your devices. The one thing you need to check at that point is what COM port has been assigned to the Bluetooth communication, because you're going to use that in the next part of the process. So then you can start the Arduino software, and when you do, you'll go to Tools, Port, and again, I'm going to say all of this is written in our document, so I know I'm going a little fast, but you go Tools, Port, you check, and that port that you noticed in the previous slide, you're going to make sure that that's the one that's assigned in the software. And then you're also, after you've checked the COM port, you come over here to the far right-hand side of the menu, which is also right there on that, and you're gonna select the serial interface. One thing that you may have to do is keep pushing that button on the outside of the gateway, because that Bluetooth is only on for how long?
15 seconds.
And so if it times out without finishing the connection, you may not have to start back through the whole process, but you may have to pick it up in the middle. And really, once you once you're successful at it, you sort of figure out how things work. It's not that difficult.
And with the Arduino, doing it over Bluetooth, the actual like serial monitor window won't open until it has established a connection with the Bluetooth. So that's how you'll know it works if something comes up. If nothing comes up, then it didn't work.
So once you're connected and the serial window opens, the first thing that you'll see is initialization complete. It'll tell you that the current configuration is Bluetooth output, and you can change that. But it's good not to do that. So the next part of the menu that will show up will be the lower portion here, which will come up and give you several things, several choices, like setting the clock or setting it. Primarily, we're interested in downloading data. So,
Harry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Stephen.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but can folks make sure they mute their phones when they're not talking? Because there's a lot of background noise.
Right.
Thanks.
Chris may be able to mute everyone.
Yes, I can. If people, I don't know if everybody has found the chat window. Actually, if I mute everyone, you can still go in and unmute yourself, I'm pretty sure. So,
you're probably going to mute me too.
Oh yeah, it'll mute you.
Go ahead.
All right. Hold on a second, everybody. Okay. Okay, Harry, you should be back on.
Now, you can hear me now, right?
Yes, we've got you.
Okay. So what we're wanting to do here in the serial interface is to download all data. So you enter a D up here in this portion of the window. You have to push send.
You can push send or enter.
Yeah, send or enter, and the data will begin to display on the serial monitor window. And so it should look like this left-hand side. You'll get a lot of numbers showing up. At that point, what you have to, once all the data is in the window, use Control-A to select all data, and then use Control-C to copy the data, and you open a text file like using Windows Notebook. And once you're in the notebook file, oops, sorry guys, I did punch the wrong thing. Punch or use Control-V to paste the data into that file and then save it. So that's one way to save the data.
Yeah, and you'll notice that this picture is a little more updated, that the menu is a little different, so now you have the option D is to download all the node data. So that's all the data that's been transmitted to the gateway, and then the gateway data includes, the battery voltage, the ID, and then your humidity and temperature readings are going to be there as well. And that's kind of more as a backup, so that in case the nodes don't send, you'll still be getting humidity data.
Yep. So
I might add here.
The next slide is using the program TerraTerm Pro, which is, we're still talking about using a laptop or a tablet. This program to me is a little bit easier to get the data with. Once you download it and install it, and you still have to do the Bluetooth connection stuff that we've already gone over, And once you start this program up, it'll come up and ask you, do you want to do a connection over TCP/IP, or do you want to do it over serial? So you'll say serial, and again, you got to know which Bluetooth port has been assigned to that tiny sign connection, the connection with the gateway. And so you would select it over here where the green circle is. So once you've selected your connection method, you may again have to push the button on the gateway to get that Bluetooth going again, because like Alondra was saying, it's a 15-second timeout on that thing. But basically the same menu will come up to show you that you can set the clock, set the ID number, download all data. And so again, you'll enter a D. Did I skip a slide? No, I didn't. Press D, and it'll download the data. And at this point, you come over and you say edit, and you say select all, and you go through the same process of copying and pasting to a text file. The thing I like about the TerraTerm software is that there's another option, is that you can come over and you can say log, and once you collect, you select the log button, it'll bring up a log window, and you can actually just save all the data that was downloaded as a log file. You don't have to do copy and paste and put it into a different piece of software like Notepad. So to do that, you just make sure that the include screen buffer is selected, and then it'll automatically give it a file name. But what we do is you have to add the farm name. Mm-hmm. So the farm ID is this 10 that's on here. And then just punch save or push the save button, and the data will be saved. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Okay. The third way of getting the data is using an Android app with your cell phone, or maybe you've got like a Google Chromebook or something like that. We found that this app called BlueTerm is pretty easy to use. You download it from the Google Play Store, and it'll look like this is the icon that'll show up on your phone. Again, you have to turn on Bluetooth, and you have to pair your device with either TinySign or TinyOS. Some of the modules, some of the Bluetooth modules have a little bit different name. And in doing that pairing, again, the pin number is 1234. And once you've paired, it'll come up and say paired devices is TinyOS. One of the things that once you start that BlueTerm app on your phone, you need to bring up the menu that's down at the bottom, and on the phone that we were working with, you had to punch the back button, or you had to hold the back button to get this menu to come up. So at this point, in the BlueTerm software, you say connect device, you come over and you select TinyOS. So this is different than pairing your phone with Bluetooth. This is actually getting the app to communicate with the gateway. So it's sort of like going through the process a second time. And so once you select TinyOS, it'll come up and give you that same initialization complete, communicating over Bluetooth. And you'll get the same menu of, what do you want to do here? Do you want to download the data? Before you enter D, come over again, use your back select button to say start logging, and then enter D. And once you enter the D, the data will download, but since you said start logging, the data is automatically going into a log file on your phone. So then to find the file, you would go to your My Files folder on your phone, and then you could just send that via an email or a text to wherever we're going to be uploading the data to. So hopefully once we've got the data back and we've had a chance to start graphing it out, what we're going to have is a lot of data that looks like this, where we've got changes in soil water content over time for these different plots. This is some data that we collected last year using similar soil water probes. The documentation for this is going to be on the website. One of them is installing the software, and then the other is on the gateway data collection from the Bluetooth. So do you want to add anything else?
Just about the 15 seconds. The 15 seconds is the amount of time you have to pair or to connect with the Bluetooth. But once you're actually connected, it's not going to cut off on you. It'll stay connected as long as you're using it.
So questions?
Great. And might I just add to everybody, so as we've talked to folks in North Carolina, the conversation's gone to other regions, there's multiple ways of collaborating on this. And some folks don't want to be at all involved in grabbing this data, and that is absolutely fine. A bunch of people have talked about wanting to be able to do this for a couple of reasons. One is they would like to be able to use their own sensors in the future in extension, to have their own sensors used in their own trials in the future. And so we are glad to, when we come out there and work with this, we're glad to work through what we're just talking about here one-on-one with you, showing you how this can work, because the sensors that this team has put together are amazingly inexpensive, and we're developing a little cost sheet here. So between the sensors and all the electronics, it may look expensive, but it's not. And that's because it's basically their brain power that's gone into it, not a lot of money. But then there's also, if you're, just want to see the data coming out, that's great too. We grab the data, and what'll happen is, if you participate in the data acquisition, that just speeds up how often this data is going to come to you and your farmer, because we can only process the data once somebody sends it to us. My team can't come around every couple of weeks to all these sites all over North Carolina. So it just dictates how often, but either way we go, everybody's going to get all the data. It's just a matter of how frequently it comes in, is what I should say. And we have a little programs that we write so that once the data gets sent to us, then it gets automatically processed and comes back to you in a graph showing you how much water you got with a cover crop and how much water you got without a cover crop.
So one thing that I wanted to add to it, Chris, is that besides the soil water sensors, well, the soil water sensors are giving us the soil water content at 3 depths. And you have to help me out, Chris, because we changed this, what were the depths that we're doing?
Well, we're quite close to the whole water content down to 3 feet, but they're sort of centered at different, one of them centered around, in the top 15 centimeters, another one centered around in the top between 15 and 30, not 15 inches, another one centered around
30 inches, I think.
30 inches, yeah.
And then in addition to that, we've got a temperature sensor that we're putting under the residue decomposition bags, and we're also collecting that humidity data out at the gateway, because that comes back to the modeling effort with Miguel. So that's what we've got.
Great, thank you all very much, and again, on behalf of the whole team, we thank you for putting together this whole set of sensors and protocols that wouldn't have been possible without you all. So now we're gonna turn things over to Stephen Mirsky, who's working on the nitrogen crediting piece of this for the cover crops. Stephen, see if you can figure out how to share your screen.
Should be done. Hello?
Can see you,
Can you
Stephen.
hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I got you. Yes, and your screen just came up. Great.
You see the screen, or do you see the screen or the PowerPoint slide, progressive slides? Like
Just PowerPoint slide.
okay, good. All right, hey everybody. Good to be on the webinar today. Thanks, Harry, for giving a quality and thorough review of these high-tech sensors. That was wonderful. I'm going to probably be a little bit less technical and more just give some context of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and then a brief little description of what we're actually doing. And if you can see, this is my left shoulder here, so there's some guy sitting here to my left, behind me to my left shoulder, which is Reshin Thapa, and he'll be coordinating all of the on-farm Reberg research for our team here in Maryland and the greater states that we'll be collaborating with that are close to us. He won't be working in Georgia and North Carolina now. Anyway, so we're going to talk about cover crop decomposition bags. These are a way that we can track the decomposition of cover crops over time, study the nitrogen, the release that's coming from those cover crops, and gives us a handle on how that's synchronizing with what the nitrogen needs are for your corn cash crop. So just to review, why is it not advancing? Let's see. There we go. This project is focused around corn. Future studies may take into consideration other commodities, but for now we're looking at a heavy nitrogen feeding cash crop like corn. And for all of you involved, you also know that we're working in a no-till environment, so there's not going to be any tillage. And this figure that I have presented here, if you can see my arrow moving up here, this is a figure of across the different growth stages of corn, the nitrogen uptake of that corn crop, and then it's broken down into these various different components of the corn plant. But all I really want you to cue into is something most of you already know, that once you get to this point here around side dress, that's when corn is rapidly taking up nitrogen. You can see this real exponential uptake here. So this is the point where you want to have lots of nitrogen, right? Because this is the part where corn is taking it up very readily. And so just like in when looking at mineral fertilizers, we split our nitrogen application rates where we have this starter and this side dress to have the most efficient utilization of our nutrients and the least amount of loss. We're really interested in understanding how cover crops play a role in their releasing of nutrients and how that synchronizes with crop uptake so that we can better manage our cover crops for that nitrogen availability, or in some cases that nitrogen immobilization. So immobilization is when that nitrogen is tied up in microbial biomass. And so what is going on with that nitrogen depends on how a farmer is going to need to manage their fertility. And so we're hoping we can inform that through one, developing these decomposition studies on farm, and then the subsequent products would be to integrate these into a model that would be built into a web-based app that producers can use that app by putting in a little bit of information about their cover crop and getting the nitrogen release patterns of their cover crop and help inform their end management decisions. So these are what these litter bags look like in the field. This is a really heavy residue system here, so this may not look anything like your farm or the farms that you're working with, but this is what it looks like in a really heavy residue application, and we're loading up these mesh bags and then putting them out in the field. These mesh bags look a bit different than what mesh bags we're going to be putting out in the field. Ours are a bit more rectangular because we were trying to be tightly linked to the row spacing of your corn crop, and you'll see those in the near future as we start to roll them out. But this is the kind of information that we can get from this kind of work. So you can see on the left in the top corner here, it says no-till, and then here it says tillage. So this is two different fields, a no-till and a till field, and we're looking at the nitrogen release patterns. And so just track Chris, does my arrow come up really nicely? Is it very visible?
Yeah, looks great.
Okay. So you can see the nitrogen release is your y-axis, and what we're looking at here is a pure hairy vetch, a mixture, and pure cereal rye. And so these are just the release patterns of nitrogen coming from those cover crops. This is the kind of data that these decomposition bag studies will provide us. Now, this was done for a fairly mature cover crop, but that's going to really vary depending on the grower that we're working with. So if you look here on this table, I'm showing you grasses and legumes, and you can see grasses can range in their performance from low to high depending on a site's fertility and certainly the optimal planting dates. But based on these different optimal performance levels, at these different growth stages, you can see tillering, stem elongation, boot, anthusis. This is just the different growth stages of a cereal. You're going to see different amounts of biomass, but more importantly, you're going to see different amounts of CN ratios. And these carbon to nitrogen ratios are what's driving your overall decomposition relationships that you're seeing out there. So how much carbon to nitrogen is going to greatly affect that end release pattern. And you can see here with the legumes that they're mature across their maturity, that CN ratio doesn't change that much. And when we look at combining cover crops like into a mixture, which some of you producers or the ag professionals working with these producers may have, you can see on this axis here, for example, at the bottom, this is a hairy vetch cereal rye mixtures, and you have this, zero vetch, 100% rye, all the way going to 100% vetch, zero rye. And you can just see these continuum of CN ratios. And all that's just showing you is that as you add grass and legumes, you adjust your CN ratios. One of the things that we've been learning over the years is that CN ratios are not the only driver, that, so-called all carbon is not created equal, that the quality of the carbon affects the decomposition. So our team is moving away from this CN ratio way of describing the cover crop and its decomposition, and using more forage-based analysis that's going to give us a better, more complete characterization of the material. And that way, we don't need to focus so much on what species and what the CN ratios are. All we care about is what the quality of the cover crop was based on this forage analysis and how much quantity you have. And that's how we can start to develop these models that are going to be linked to this data we're collecting in the field. So what does this look like in the field? Very simply, what are we coming out and doing? It's going to be a little bit of a larger scale than this, but we'll essentially come out and collect some cover crop biomass in a plot, and we'll remove that to the soil surface, and then we'll compile all that material, we'll keep it all together, and we'll get a sense of what the mass is out in the field, so how much total weight, fresh weight is in that sample area, and we'll use that to construct our litter bags, and these litter bags should be reflecting the biomass that's out in the field. So if you have very low levels of biomass, say 500 pounds per acre of biomass, that's how much material will go into that bag. If you have very high levels, that's going to be what's going on. We're trying to mimic what the actual field biomass levels are. And then we put these litter bags out in the field. The first bag, we actually put out 6. We make 6 bags even though you only see 5. That 6th bag, we're going to take with us and take home for analysis so that we can get like a time zero what that quality and quantity and the ratio, if you have mixtures, to help inform the study. And then over time, we're going to be coming in every 2 weeks for the first couple of weeks, then 3 weeks, and the 4th week, so that we can come across the growing season and track the decomposition of the cover crops that are in the field. And what this might look like on any one given producer's field site, I'm sorry this is a little bit blurry, but again, this is the no cover crop strip and the cover crop strip, the beige being the cover crop strip here, and as Harry illustrated earlier. And we're going to have these micro plots within here, 4 micro plots, and these 4 micro plots are going to contain our litter bags. So we're going to have replication out there for monitoring that. And one of the reasons we have lots of replication is that we're going to be putting out litter bags in alternating rows if farmers have alternating fertility applications. So for example, in my region of Maryland, a lot of growers are putting down their fertilizer at side dress every other corn row. And so that's just one way that they're fertilizing. So if we get fertilizer going down and it's going on a litter bag, we need to have litter bags that don't have nitrogen going down on them, so we can have the cumulative effect of applying a side dress versus not applying a side dress on that plant material, because obviously additional nitrogen being sprayed on those bags are going to affect their decay. So we just need to be able to capture both of those scenarios. And then the end result is that we're going to get these nitrogen release patterns, right? And we're also going to be looking at corn nitrogen uptake at some of these sites. And most importantly, then we have this model that is estimating these release patterns. In some cases, and if it's a pure cereal rye with a very big, heavy cover crop, you're not going to get much nitrogen release. You're going to get a lot of nitrogen immobilization. And so we're going to track that. We're going to have a model that estimates these relationships based on all of these calculations that are built into the model. And now we're saying, how well does that model predict what's going on out in the field? And so we have all this empirical data we're collecting on farms all over the region. We're saying this model's predicting a value. Then we're saying, here's what's actually going on. And we're hoping that they're pretty close. If they're not pretty close, we'll start to make adjustments in the model based on additional studies that we're doing to improve the overall quality of the model. And so the end result would be this calibrated model that we would build these web-based tools that growers can be using to help make those decisions. And so with that, that's the end of my presentation.
Great, thank you, Stephen. So then, the only remaining piece that'll happen at the end after we've done all this is we're grabbing yield for you. And so I've had several folks ask about running a yield monitor over the plots, and we would absolutely love that. So if you're in a position to be able to grab yield monitor data from these plots, that would be great. Either way, we will plan on doing a hand harvest of a number of protocol. I'm thinking we've got about 60 linear feet out of both out of the cover crop versus the non-cover crop that'll ultimately come out. So we will have a yield estimate for every grower coming out of that hand harvest. But it'd also be great to get the yield monitor out there if you're interested, and we'd love to get that data from you as well. And again, we are going to be sending out several things that I want to make you aware of. Again, we have documents coming for all of these different protocols for you to participate as an extension agent or as a farmer in any way that you want to be. So if you like some of the things you've heard, you would like to learn in depth about how these sensors are operating and how to download the data from them, we would absolutely love that. When we come out, we'll run through the documents with you. We can also work on pairing up whatever device you would be using, so we can do the Bluetooth, help you get the Bluetooth pairing set up. So for those we've had several who've talked about wanting to have their own setup of this in future years, then we'd love to start that with you this year. And then for those who just want us to come and collect the data, we will come a couple times this summer. The data is logged, no matter what we do, the data is logged for the entirety of the summer. So we're never in a position where we have to go get data, or otherwise we're going to lose the data. The data will be logged for the whole summer. And we will be coming out there periodically to collect bags. We're hoping that many of our extension agent partners can help us with the bag collection. So we'll be talking with you more about that as well, or the growers. It's we can talk about that with you individually. We're trying to grab these bags on intervals of every 2 to 3 weeks. Where we can find help with that would be great. But regardless, we will be around several times this summer after installation and getting a chance to talk with you all. But I want to stop right there so that we have plenty of time for questions. I think I've got everybody on mute. Let me just unmute all now if I can figure out how to do that. Here we go. Okay, everybody should be off mute. If you'd like to return to mute, please go ahead and click your mute button again. But we're open for questions.
Chris, I've got a question.
Hey, George. Yeah, fire away.
So on for extension helping with bag collection,
Yeah.
would we pull those bags and then mail them to you, or what would be the protocol for that?
Well, we could come back and collect them. The main thing is that anybody that's helping us we'd like them pulled out of the field and put in some type of drying environment. So for everybody who wants to help out with that, well, we could put them in actually just an oven, in a home oven, and dry them out a little bit. and then they'll store, and then we'll collect them as we come back through. So
What's the temperature you put those home ovens on?
great. I've got Sarah on the line. We put ours, see, that's around 140 degrees, so about the bottom end of what an oven does.
Okay.
Most of them do about 170 is the lowest my home oven sets, and that would be just fine.
Okay.
Sarah, is that I'm speaking truth here, I hope.
Yeah, I agree with that, Chris. I mean, I would say that most importantly that they've got a dryer that they can dry it, or if they've got a place that has air flowing on all sides of it and put a fan on it to get it to dry fast. I mean, those are the important pieces. I mean, we're not going to probably leave the bag at any one site too long, but we have lots of sites to cover, so having folks who are out in the state to be able to collect these bags and store them for us for periods of time is really helpful. Just as long as they get dry fast is what's critical.
Okay.
And we're having a little hard time anticipating, here in North Carolina we have 17 locations, and so part of our scheduling is we're not exactly sure how these are going to line up. So it may be the situation where we're able to collect the bags most of the time, no problem. And other times we're like, oh my God, we're never going to make it to such and such county. And we call and ask for a favor and see if you can help pull a bag and stick it. The other thing I'll say in the past, I don't know, Stephen, while we're all here, Brent, I've had growers, when I used to do forage work, put them in a hot car. In the middle of the summer, if you take them and put them in a hot car, your car smells a little bit like a cover crop, but they dry really quickly, has been my experience in a hot car.
Yeah, I mean, these bags are not like, they don't have that much moisture in them that they'll just smog up the car really bad. They're not. It's not like they're that wet that you're going to be pouring so much moisture into the car.
Right.
You might crack the windows, but
yes.
I mean, generally, if you're going in on a dry day, those residues are drying out quite a bit themselves anyway, because once they're dead, I mean, they're just picking up moisture and losing moisture. They're not like retaining moisture like a living plant would.
That's a great point, right? If we've had a dry spell and it hasn't rained and you get there in the afternoon on a hot day, they're pretty much stable right then. So
yeah, just don't pick it up first thing in the morning with the dew on it.
Yeah, that's right. So again, I put this all out there so that we have those individual conversations when we get out with what you're comfortable with and what you can help with. So. The other thing I'll be providing to each of you for each farm location is you will get one link for where all of the data that is affiliated with that site comes to. So whether it's data on the biomass composition, whether it's data on the water, whatever else, as soon as data is in a format where we can see it, you will be able to see it at the same time in real time. So anyway, that's where, again, like, for those who are participating in data download on the water sensors, when you upload that file, which we'll share with you, you can email it to us. We also have, from North Carolina, we have a file upload button that just comes through. And you hit that upload button, then that'll return to you processed data.
Questions are just pouring in, aren't they?
It's all right.
I am holding back. I have another question. So, so we saw something weird last year with our collaborator where he planted into a growing cover crop, and he also planted next to it where there was no cover crop. And I really expected crop failure where he was planting into the cover crop, especially as dry as it was. He actually indicate he had better yields where he had planted into the cover crop.
Yeah.
And I just don't understand what happened there. That cover crop should have transpired all that soil moisture, I would have thought, and then he would have been left a little dry when we came up short on moisture last season. And I'm wondering, was that just an anomaly? Is there something about hydraulic lift, or are you all seeing any indication of these things?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because that's sort of the central question here. Is that for one from viewing our plots in multiple states now, but not having this quantitative water data throughout the profile to really nail it, is that this idea of a disadvantage because the cover crop transpired out water doesn't show up very often. I mean, certainly that's possible, right? I mean, a water uses more plant than a bare fallow plot.
Right.
But I think there's a couple of things that we think are going on, and there's some other possibilities. One is that if you look at our winter, that we get way more moisture over the winter than plants can use. So in general, we're going to head into the spring, even in a cover cropped and in a bare ground plot, and they're going to be more similar than you would think, just because it's been excess moisture all around. And so whatever transpired, the cover crop transpired is immaterial. You've had excess moisture enough to drain through and go to the groundwater, so it doesn't really matter. Now that said, can you endure a dry April or a dry late March and April, and then the cover crop starts drawing down your soil water and leaving you dry relative to the bare ground? Yeah, that could certainly happen, and you can end up with establishment problems.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, I don't want to undercount that that's possible and could possibly be a problem. I'm just saying in general, based on our weather pattern, we tend to not see as big a difference there as you would think. There tends to be very little difference. And then more importantly is that, you know, even in a low rain summer, we get some rain here. We never go without. And the rain that we do get comes so hard and so fast that any difference the cover crop can make in terms of getting water infiltration, particularly in an area like yours where you have contours, I mean, where you have, you know, some land rise and fall, it's just, we think that's a huge, huge difference there. When you have a cover crop, you're able to get infiltration rates that are just a lot higher, even than a long-term no-till field that doesn't have that cover crop residue. Because our water just comes so hard and so fast.
Okay.
And then lastly, you will have, you know, you are slowing evaporation off the soil surface. And so we do have some less loss of evaporative losses there. My guess, Harry is our expert here right now that's on the phone, but my guess is that's relatively small compared to the infiltration question. But then I will say we did collect surface. We have collected surface, the top 6 inches of soil water for the past like 4 or 5 years now in this cover crop bare ground. And for reasons I don't understand, even in a dry, we've had dry Aprils, we've had locations show wetter, the top 6 inches are actually wetter where I had the cover crop than where I didn't.
Right, right.
And you asked about hydraulic lift and all that. I mean, I'm not willing to commit to that. I don't understand it. The vetch seems particularly prone to having it's wetter underneath that vetch mat, even though it should be transpiring water, than it is next door without it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Stephen and Harry, if you've seen that as well in your area?
Sorry. I was just talking to Alondra. We've got some data from here where what you see is diurnal fluctuations in soil moisture content because water is moving back up from down in the soil profile. And, you know, I think, like you explained, Chris, there are a lot of different reasons for what's going on when you plant into a standing cover crop residue without, you know, or standing cover crop without killing it. You have to go back and look at what the weather patterns were for the previous 14 days and then for the next 14 days, and you can probably piece the story together.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have to be just moisture. Was that your question? Was it specifically moisture? Because there's a lot of reasons why growers are interested in planting green that has nothing to do with moisture management. It has to do with, you know, insects and soil friability and so it could easily be that they're receiving other benefits from planting into green that affects populations and stand counts and things like that have nothing to do with water.
Okay. Yeah. I guess we just assumed that the big difference was water. And I don't know if we were out there at the right times to even see if there had been other effects, like you mentioned, Stephen, the insects.
There's a lot of evidence right now that planting green actually provides other material for the critters to be eating. And so they're not as likely to chomp down on your cash crop. At
Wow.
least I know that there's some folks in Pennsylvania and in Eastern Shore, Maryland, that are speculating that that's what's going on.
So the probes in this project are only going down to 6 inches?
The probes in this project are down to 3 feet.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Okay, down to 3 feet. Okay.
Yeah. In previous, I had data from just 6 inches and a bunch of studies. These go down to 3 feet. So this will really nail,
Okay.
for most of our soils, that's reasonably what corn is going to have access to in terms of water. That's about, every once in a while a bit deeper, but.
Okay.
Another thing too for doing this and just watching it and having learning moments with your growers is when we head into a dry spell, go out there, once it's been really dry and hot for a number of days, the leaves are going to curl at some point during the day. And if you have a water difference between experimental plots that matter, that's really going to ultimately affect yield, you will see a time of day at which they leaf curl difference there.
Mm-hmm.
So I have seen that, where I have one treatment starting to curl its leaves at 11 o'clock in the morning, another one waits till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And so there's really no more powerful. In fact, I had it in a letter at one point as part of this project. It's just the camera part is moving slower, but we're trying to figure out a way to auto detect the time at which the leaves curl in the corn. I'll actually be deploying that in just a few places this year because it's been a little slower. But anyway, I think that ultimately that's what matters. If the more time the corn plant spends curled, the less time it is building yield. All right, and I would love to, if everybody on the line, whether now or just send me an email asking whether these webinars are helpful. Would you like to have more in the future? We'll be seeing a lot of y'all here this spring and early summer. So, maybe we're interested in later on in the summer, whether you'd like to have them. But anyway, we'd love to have some feedback on the webinars, whether these are helpful or not. Anybody else? All right, well, we're coming up on our hour then. So we'll be sending out links to the documents, and there's also a recording of this webinar. So if you just can't get enough of it, get out some popcorn and please watch again. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye, you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Let me get this thing off. I'm out of